Hello, everybody. This is Scott Abels. I'm the president and the co-founder of Prepjet. Want to welcome you to our Friday podcast, where I want to answer your questions, but also bring you updates about the EPPP. Before I begin, I want to congratulate one of our applicants who just recently passed. I want to read. This is from a real person. Ethan, what's her name? Priyanka. Got to use my C9 glasses here. She wrote, many times it felt like passing the EPPP was a pipe dream, but I passed on my second attempt yesterday. I had been studying on and off on my own using Prepjet since 2019, but my focus shifted more in 2021. There were many challenges I had to overcome, personal, professional, and pandemic, to get where I am today. I had briefly looked over the materials from other companies and felt so overwhelmed with their content, but never did with Prepjet. Prepjet has the most up-to-date, important content, and it's presented in a concise way. Stay on the course, rest, recharge, and keep going. It's easy to be discouraged with this process. So building a small community of people going through the same helped with my motivation and studying together. Now, this young lady is a member of our Facebook study group, the Prepjet Facebook study group, which is open to all applicants. Although I must tell you, I've got several from overseas countries I didn't even know existed, and they all want to post the same thing. Hey, everyone, PM me. I passed the second time, and I'll send you information on how I passed. These are the scammers. So if they don't furnish me with a legitimate name and an email address that I can't track, I'm not going to let them in our group. We have a very healthy group of people. But I want to use today to tell you about something that we've been working on for the better part of 2021. Some years ago, I worked with two applicants of ours, Joyce, who currently lives, well, when I met her, she lived in Los Angeles, where she worked at the VA. And I think then she went down to Georgia, and she's now living in the Carolinas. And there was another applicant I was working with named Jill, who's in Canada. Well, these two met each other. They were attending some kind of a tutoring session. Then they met again in a group, and they both took the EPPP. One failed by 1 point, the other failed by 2. Now, they were working together, and they created, because they realized working with these large study groups wasn't working for them. And they came up with this method to help each other. And they were doing this over Zoom calls or Skype. And what they did was they found a way to integrate content from all the 11 domains of Diane's materials in Prepjet so that they could support each other in the learning process. Well, this really intrigued me, and we started to talk very early this year. Maybe it was actually last year too, but I was just scrolling through old emails, because what I find so commendable is both of these people, Jill and Joyce, were actually volunteering to assist people on their own using a method that derives from the Prepjet material. And I kept wondering, why was Jill constantly talking about how great Diane's videos were? And then I understood from an applicant's perspective, I understood it better. And over the last 9-10 months, many people who've worked with them have come back to me to tell me about their experience. So I wanted them to develop a proposal for Dr. Markovitz and I. And you know that Dr. Markovitz is a man who created the first accredited PsyD program in the United States and Canada. And it was the American Schools of Professional Psychology. And he created and built this boutique college of psychology. Now, this is a man who has dedicated the better part of over 50 years of his life to higher ed. And he created Yorkville University decades ago from nothing. He was the first American ever given permission to create a university system in Canada. He is still the chairman of their board. He also owns a law school a nonprofit law school in Atlanta. He lives between Florida, Toronto, and Chicago and Atlanta. He's in his 70s. He's been my mentor since I was the president of what were the two largest brands before we left to form Prepjet. So this is a man who I knew once he met Jill and Joyce and heard their idea about creating a master class. I knew if he thought it was going to be a good idea, then this is something we have to do. In my heart, I know that there are retakes. There's more retakes than first timers out there. Multiple failures. Today's phone calls are pretty much reflective of what I see. Smart, intelligent people having to be to deal with questions that have very little to do with what they do in terms of therapy. And as a result, and knowing how regressive the EPPP is, it made sense to create something new. And we didn't want to be, listen, I was the king of the workshops. Between my former two brands, I was in every major city twice a year, including Calgary, and I had the best trainers, but it was all lecture and note taking. There wasn't a lot of interaction. And it was just lecture, 15-minute break, lecture, lunch, lecture, 15-minute break. There's never enough coffee. And by day 2 of the 4-day workshop, their eyes were glazed over and they went home with a stack of notes, which they probably couldn't even read a week later or know what they meant. I personally know that workshops after the exam became computerized in 2000 served a very small percentage of people. Because like taking tests chronically, you really don't learn much. Just the other day, I was working with an applicant who has spent more time just taking tests. This has got to stop. It's madness to take tests over and over and then give yourself all this false belief that you're going to pass simply because you've memorized 30% of the answers on a test. That is not mastery. Mastery comes from our summaries. But I want to talk to you about master class, why we call it a master class. One, because it's not open to everyone. It's only open to retakes, and it goes beyond the big 6. It requires the applicant to have read all of the summaries in all of the domains and have taken at least one full-length exam within 90 days of their attending a workshop. So the first workshops will be offered in the month of November. Now, each of the sessions, the first 3 sessions out of 4, so there's 4 90-minute sessions that Jill and Joyce have developed. We're going to focus on 2 or more of the domains. What they've done is they've come up with this idea of integration of domains. They believe, and I've seen it happen, that you can take, for instance, industrial and organizational psychology somehow can be supported through your understanding of test construction. And obviously, as a result of that, your knowledge of test construction will improve. So they have 4 sessions, the integration of clinical, psychopathology, and physio, then which includes, for instance, and I'm going to have to cheat here, teaching content integration strategy using specific examples. So they're going to be using the Prepjet content from all the different domains. They're going to introduce you to a process of integration, which will help enhance your understanding of the content and create mastery as opposed to memorization, which we want to avoid. So session 1 is the integration of clinical, psychopathology, and physio. Session 2 is the integration of lifespan and memory, early influences of development, timeline of development, impact of aging on memory, common patterns of, psychological assessment results over the lifespan. There's other things, changes in the big 5 personality traits over the lifespan. This is all now available at prepjet.net, where you can see the actual syllabus of the course, which we never did at my old brands. There was no such thing. But I want applicants to know what they're about to get into. The integration of IO, test construction, social psych, the role of an IO psychologist, integrate test construction concepts with IO, integrate social group behavior concepts with IO. And then session 4 is going to be discussing the gray areas of ethics in multiple relationships and other topics of importance. There's so much more I could tell you. There will be sessions on Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time in November. And then they're going to do 4 sessions on, let's see, we got Wednesdays. And then I guess the other one, I can't tell if I think the other one is either a Saturday or a Sunday. And you can go to the website. I just happened to pick this. Now, Jill and Joyce also, we wanted you to know who they are, so we put their bios there, their credentials. Like I said, Jill is in Canada, where she is a licensed clinical psychologist, and so is Joyce. Joyce works for the VA, while Jill has a private practice. So this is all going to be online. You can ask questions. You're going to be able to get answers to your questions. So unlike me, I don't teach psychology. There is a presumption that all of you have been trained through your school to know psychology. Clearly, you don't know it for the test. So here with Prepjet, we have to somehow modify what you think you know and also expose you to those obscure elements that you need to know. The other day, I was just talking to a school psychologist. There were a lot of things on her EPPP that she was not prepared for. And we understand that. All of you have skills. And it's unfortunate that they just don't have an ethics exam for you to take, for your province or state, as well as maybe a national ethics exam based on the standards. And ethics is heavily weighted on the test. Just this week was one of the first times I've actually met with someone who missed 15 out of, say, 30 scored ethics questions. That's very rare, because even people who score in the 300s, meaning they missed well over 20 questions, they missed, in some cases, 25 or 30 questions. And I've talked to people who are scored in the 200s, yet they didn't miss that many ethics. And ethics on your bar graph, for those of you that are retakes, ethics is the only domain where it says ethics. Right above it, where it says statistics and research design, that's not an accurate title, really, because there's org questions in that bar graph. And that bar graph is not of equal value, point value, compared to, say, ethics. You should watch my video. There's a video, I believe, one of the 85 videos I've done on strategies in the Prepjet website, where I talk about how to read the bar graph. But if you want someone to read your bar graph and you failed within the last 90 days, take a picture of it with your phone and email it to my colleague who's right over there, Ethan, ETHAN, at prepjet.net. You don't need to be a client. He's happy to read them. He is not a salesman. The only sales tool we have really is the trial and diagnostic test. Because, see, retakes can usually tell when they look at these questions and they say, gee, my company, the company I use, they didn't cover this. They didn't go into great detail about interventions on conduct disorder. So there's a clock there to keep me on my mind. So I've started a little earlier today. But I want you to feel free to send your bar graphs, as long as, listen, Ethan got an email the other day from someone who failed 5 years ago. Looking at their bar graph is a waste of time. They're not going to remember any of this stuff. So why not just start from scratch? Earlier today, I had a client. Her test is in December. Her scores are not bad at all. They're actually quite good. But she's worried that she might have to move her December date to January. It's October. Why are we talking about this? Why aren't we just studying? Why are we already trying to convince ourselves that we cannot pass this exam? Please don't do that to yourself. If you score 450 or higher, like a 495, where you missed by one question, you don't need to wait 90 days. Your board may make you, but you shouldn't. You have a lot of knowledge. 450 means you missed by 10 items. And if you had just answered 10, and listen, I'm working with one right now who failed by 5. This person should retest ASAP. But they missed by 5 because they changed at least 10 answers. So the problem you may think is content related, but I think it has a lot more to do with their self-esteem, with their self-confidence. And for those of you that have failed numerous times or even once, this coming Wednesday, for instance, I'm not sure of the actual date, and I don't know when you're going to see this, but if you go to the Prepjet website on the homepage and scroll down where it lists our free workshops, each month I do a workshop on rebuilding self-confidence. You see, I really believe in this because I don't care if you went to the Chicago School or Carlos Abizu or Alliant or Texas A&M or Nova or the Fielding Institute or the Wright Institute or John F. Kennedy or the Adler School. I know all these schools. I know what their curriculum consists of. No one's ever going to have curriculum that matches up with the EPPP. Why would they? It would be stupid. You wouldn't be properly trained for the real world, and the real world and the exam are two different places. So let's, please, I invite you to take a look at the masterclass, which will be taught by Jill Schroeder and Joyce. And I got to tell you something. These two people are so caring, compassionate, understanding. And also, I've noticed, particularly with applicants where English is a second language, they do very well with them. And believe you me, when English is a second language, whether it's Farsi, French, Spanish, because those are the 3 I deal with the most, I will tell you something. It takes them longer to answer questions because they're reading it in English, they're translating it, and guess what? Certain terms, certain words in clinical, ethics, physio do not translate into their native language. It takes them longer. Those are the people that tend to want to memorize answers. That's a mistake. We don't want to memorize answers. We want to learn. And if you read those summaries, I can assure you, you will learn. Now, there's a chat box. If you want to post questions for me while I'm online with you today, I will answer your questions. And I know Ethan has received some questions from our Facebook group. Ethan, what is the first question?
The first question is from Verna. What is a good score on exam 4?
Well, that would depend. I just talked to a new, he's asking, Verna wants to know what's a good score on exam 4. Obviously, when they first take test 4, when they first start with this, some of them are just dreadful. They're very low. They're in the 30s, they're in the 40s, they're they're terrible. But what do you expect? They've either used old, outdated material, or this is the first time they've taken the exam and they're dealing with stuff they've never seen before. The score on test 4 that matters is getting 70+%. Here's why. Test 4, just like 1, 2, and 3, have no experimental items in them like the real exam. So all 225 items are scored. So even if you get a 68%, Verna, you still got over 150 correct, which means you would have passed. Because all we want is to get that number. What is the passing score in my state of California? Is 123. I got to get 123 out of 175 correct. If I live in New York and one other state, I have to get 127 correct. So forget about the scaled score, etc. It's either 123 or 127. That's the cutoff to pass this exam. You need to get 70% in most states, except for New York and one other one where it's 75% of 175. So to me, if it was me and my test is coming up and I've taken 4, 3, 2, and 1, I've read the big 6, I've mastered them, and I'm scoring well over 70%. I go back after test 4, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to say, okay, I've read all the content summaries. I've watched all Diane's videos. I'm now going to go back and retake test 4 a second time because everyone has to take the test at least twice, spread out, not back to back, not in the same week, like the one person who did the other day that just drives me crazy. Can you believe it? I had an applicant who took 2 full-length practice exams in one day, and their test was like 3 days away. That's called cramming. You're not in high school. It doesn't work. Don't do that, please. But Verna, if you're getting 70+%, the only thing that's going to get in your way is if you get anxious. And your anxiety should lower as you see your scores go up. And you're starting to say, wow, I'm really mastering, because I'm using the drop-down menus, for instance, on tests 1, 2, 3, and 4, my scores have gone up in cross-cultural issues. I'm doing better on questions pertaining to children, environmental, developmental issues, or maybe I have mastering elements of the prefrontal cortex, hindbrain, midbrain, etc. When you see that progress in the drop-down menus, then you need to allow yourself to feel good. A lot of people, and this is difficult, but your therapists, isn't it interesting how hard it is for people who are trained the way you are to help yourselves? You spend your days helping other folks like me find the answers within ourselves. The tools are here. You have the tools. So Verna, you may start out with only getting 40% correct on test 4, but by the time you've gone through clinical psychopathology, physio lifespan, ethics and org, and you've taken tests 1, 2, and 3, and you go back and retake test 4, your scores are going to go up 25 to 30% because things will stick as long as you stick to a schedule and stay structured a little bit every day, but no cramming. What else, Ethan, do you have?
The next question is from Cameron. She wants to know why she should take the diagnostic exam.
Oh, the reason why we put out the diagnostic exam is very simple. And we change out those questions from time to time. And, it's kind of a mixed bag. The diagnostic exam is not intended to be difficult. Those questions come directly from mock exams 1, 2, 3, 4, and an exam we're developing right now. Now, some say if your diagnostic exam, see, we don't employ salespeople. I had that for decades at my other brands. I don't want salespeople because salespeople are not motivated based on compassion. They're motivated based on commission. They're motivated based on keeping their job by selling X number of people. At Prepjet, we don't need salespeople. We actually are a very small little tribe. There's only 5 or 6 of us that are online every day. Now, I went from a place where I had over 50 full-time employees and over 100 different trainers, writers, contractors. So, this is a major shift for me. And yet, it's so much more efficient. The diagnostic test is just a way for you, because I don't care what brands you've been using. I hear it all the time. I've heard it since we launched 5 years ago. They'll say, gee, this is a hard test. But you'll never forget the fellow from Pittsburgh. Years ago, it was a Saturday. I got an email from someone I'd never heard of. Now, this was like 3-4 years ago. And he wrote our support line. And I just happened to be looking at our emails. And he just failed the exam using a brand I was very familiar with. And he took our diagnostic test. And he was angry, he said. And he wanted someone to call him on Monday because he saw questions on the diagnostic exam that his brand didn't have. Now, I'm going to be honest. It's very easy if I still owned another brand, I would go to Prepjet, I'd steal their questions, reword them so I don't get sued for, plagiarizing. Because I know, where do you think people get their information? Do you really think they have full-time people? And where are you going to find another Diane Edwards? I mean, she's the only person in 40 years that has developed content for 3 major brands. And Diane is a one of a kind. Leave her alone, and she keeps producing because she studies the same content, the same research that the ASPPB has to have in order to support correct answers. So the purpose of the diagnostic test is not to make you feel bad. It's to give you a small slice of reality. Though it's a short test, it's not a real full-length exam, but it is a pretty decent reflection of a mixed bag of questions from all the domains. It's just not 225 questions. So out of those 100 questions, you get an opportunity to see the way we structure the question. You get an idea of the types of questions. It is not the end all. You've got to go into the trial and go and look at some of the summaries. And you're allowed to see a percentage of the summaries. You're allowed to see a percentage of our questions, but it's a percentage. It's like getting like a free trial to see some elements. But no, her lectures are not available, although I guess you can go to YouTube and see trailers. But the fact is, the diagnostic test is just to give you a snapshot of what you know now. And the questions I know are valid, meaning we found the research to support these answers. We've had enough customers every single week, every single day, every month for every year. And when we launched Prepjet, Diane went right into developing one exam, but she did it backwards. We developed the summaries first to give birth to the questions, but we didn't want to write the big study volumes like we used to do. So to answer the question, the diagnostic test is a snapshot. I'll tell you one thing that I like about our diagnostic test. It's better than you spending the money to go take that stupid PEPO, because those questions will never be on the exam. They're obsolete. So if you want to get a feel for what the exam is like, why would you pay them $50 or whatever they charge? I've been saying this for 35 years. Why would I pay to take a mock exam at the test center of questions that don't look like anything that's on the exam, when you can take our free diagnostic test? Save the money. Whether you buy from us or not is not going to change my life. But why go buy lottery tickets instead of take that stupid PEPO? You don't need it. It's a big waste of time, and people deserve to know the truth. Next question.
The next question is from Kara. She wants to know how
her name is Kara.
Kara.
Okay.
K-A-R-A.
Thank you.
She wants to know, how often do you update your content?
Well, just recently now, and I owe this to all of you. At my last couple of workshops, I read out loud, what we, because I felt it was such a significant series of updates. But the truth is, at any time in most months since March of 2020, when COVID hit, we had, I don't know where we got it, but even as late as, for instance, I started talking at my workshops about child maltreatment in April, May of this year. Okay. We know that you're going to be asked 1, possibly 3 questions about child maltreatment, the age of onset, which is 0 to 3, when they're at the highest risk. The highest risk is age birth to 3. Don't forget that. You could be asked that on the test. It could be that simple. So remember, 0 to 3 is how it'll appear on the test. If it does, it might say birth to age 3. Just remember that. But there's something else you need to know about child maltreatment. How does it reveal itself in adulthood? Well, according to some studies, obesity. Now that's something that I could write down. Child maltreatment, age of onset, long-term ramifications. So this is how we take notes. And Diane does go into the summaries. I mean, I think we've updated clinical elements of clinical probably 9 or more, could be 10 times since March of last year. Ethics, for instance, we haven't had to do much with it because we already knew about telepsychology years ago. I don't know why the other brands don't know, but telepsychology, APA came out with guidelines in 2000 and I think it was 11, and later a revised set of expanded guidelines in 2014. There might have been some experimental questions that later became scored items, but we've known about these for years. So whether they're scored or not, you need to understand what is jurisdictional telepsychology. Well, I live in California. My client lives in California. My client is moving to Florida. Am I allowed to continue to work with them? No. Now, if California had signed on to SIPACT through the ASPPB and gotten an e-passport to treat someone telephonically in another jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction has signed on to SIPACT, and many states have been signing on to it. So you should look into this once you're licensed. Because you have people that you're working with, maybe they moved to Nevada and you're in California. You got a lot of people moving from one state to another. So rather than lose the client, make sure you're in a SIPAC state. If they're in a SIPAC state, and if they're not uncomfortable with Zoom, you can still work with them as long as you apply for the SIPAC e-passport. So to get back to what you were saying, we update things all the time. I'm sorry I went on this, but ethics, the 10 standards and professional issues, Tarasoff, responding to a subpoena, all these things are important. Pay close attention to ethical standards 6 and 7, 8, 9, and 10. I noticed that applicants struggle more with 6 through 10 than they do with 1 through 5. And I talk to people from all over the United States and Canada, and there's a lot of similarities in terms of the standards that people struggle with. Yes.
So the next question is from Pat. She says that this statistics is difficult for her. She goes, how important is it?
I think you should skip it. I know we have a free workshop on statistics. I know that statistics prior to 1997 was heavily weighted. It is not heavily weighted. And my colleague since 1994, Dr. Alden Horry, who works here at Prepjet, he teaches a free workshop. And he covers statistics to the point where one of my former clients, Jean, told me if I hadn't gone to Alden's workshop, because she didn't want to read it. A lot of people don't want to read it. And those of you that get obsessed about it, don't. It's worth 5, 6 questions. Who cares? You can't answer all the clinical. You can't answer all the physio. Why are you wasting your time scraping the bottom of the barrel for a tier 3 domain? Just go to Alden's workshop. If you go to his workshop on stats, you will learn more in a shorter span of time at one workshop than you will by any other means. I tell some of my people when they have stat questions on the EPPP, just skip them because there aren't enough points. They're not going to make a difference. It's sort of like no one's ever failed the EPPP over ethics. They always fail because of clinical, psychopathology, physio, and lifespan. That much I do know.
The next question is from Annie. She wants to know what are some common obstacles she should look out for when she's taking her actual EPPP.
Oh, well, there's quite a few. Let's pretend that your test is coming up. Worst thing that can happen is when you pull in that parking lot and you're a retake, you're going to start to think about the last time you did that and how you failed. Stop it. Just get over it. It's done. Baked, cooked, gone. History. You need to have the passing mindset. And the passing mindset is to develop good study habits that you can then take into the EPPP. For instance, I always tell people, I skip any of the long questions and I answer first the shorter questions. A lot of people don't seem to have the spine for that. I don't know. I don't understand it. When I took one important exam in my life, which had 200 multiple choice exams broken into 6 segments, and this was a 2-day test. I remember I skipped all the long questions, whether I just skipped them. Now, when I do see maybe a 3-sentence question, I always read the last 2 sentences first. That's the question. That's where the question mark is. The question mark is the question. Start the tumblers tumbling. What is the domain? What are they asking me? Am I being asked what is not a symptom of something? What is a symptom of something? Is it about the age of onset or a drug? Is it about how the brain is affected due to, or a chromosomal related question, or a question about the pancreas and glucose? Whatever that is, in the last two sentences, I read that first. Then I read the entire question. And here's the most important thing, which is I'm so glad you asked this question, Ethan, because this has really been on my mind. You folks have got to believe me on this. This is so important. I see too many people writing us, and they want to debate us and tell us that our answer is wrong. And they always turn out to be wrong. They don't know how to read. What you need to do is, if you can't figure out why this answer isn't the correct answer, then try to figure out why how these three could ever be correct. The fact is, three answers are not right, they're not better, they're not best, they're wrong. A question is very specific, but there are nuances in the question just as there are in the language of the answer choices. And what I want you to embrace is this. When you read these questions, formulate an answer first in your head. Then look at the four choices. Look for the answer that comes closest to yours and stick with it. Or through the process of elimination. Well, I know right away that this is a junk answer, and I see that this answer is the opposite of another answer. So that calls them both into some question. Now, maybe it won't be that straightforward, but there is an answer that will come close. Yesterday, I talked to an applicant, and I always use this as an example. She was the second person, probably in a year, that got it right when I said, what is the first stage of strategic family therapy? And she actually used the word social. She was talking about socialization. Now, on the exam, they might use the word welcoming instead of the word social. But as long as you know that's the first stage, then you got it right. Because it's the people who think it's joining with the family, you got it wrong. Remember, strategic and structural family therapies are family therapies that people often confuse. That's why you've got to read those last sentences first to know what is the question, what is the domain, what is the subdomain. Now I'm going to read the body of the question, and now I'm going to decide this sentence is going to help me. This is a junk sentence. Folks, some of these questions are, I sound like Joe Biden. Folks, some of these questions are 14 years old. All they do is add sentences and then change the answer choices to type back to those sentences. But the question is not what you think. So if you read the last two sentences, then you are halfway home. And then remember one other thing, just a strategy that's worth remembering. Every 25 questions at home and then at the EPPP, you stop. You close your eyes, you look at the floor, maybe you turn your head. You can't hit the pause button at Pearson. So go to the restroom if you need to, but always be aware of time. Don't panic about the clock. Some questions you're going to answer real quickly. Others need more time. Just read carefully. And remember, there's very little in psychology that is absolute, except you're not to sleep with your clients. In ethics, there are absolutes. But when we're talking about theories and therapies and research, there is rarely going to be an answer that says always, never. But they do use terms like likely and least likely. And if we don't notice least likely or is not a symptom. So I read too fast and I say is a symptom. No, it says is not a symptom. That can change the whole dynamic. One word makes A correct and B incorrect. Did you read it carefully? Did you slow down? I hope you did. because that's how you'll pass the exam. I have time for one more question.
Alrighty, the last question is from Ricky. He asks, who do I consult with to find out what to study next?
You, Ethan, ETHAN. Sorry, that's you. They got to contact Ethan at prepjet.net. Ethan has been with us now for over a year, and he actually has studied and read all the summaries. He's actually worked with us he started working with us actually over a year ago, doing things like helping me with my video library. But the fact is, he's mastered all the content summaries, and he actually sends out questions to applicants while they're in the study process. When they say, "Oh, Ethan, I just finished clinical." Really? Well, then answer these questions. So you would write Ethan, ETHAN, at prepjet.net. Now, for billing and technical issues, you always write support 7 days a week at prepjet.net. Now, we're all in California. All right? We're in California. So please understand, Sundays, we have a light staff. And I want my team to enjoy a little time off with their families. But Ethan works till 6 o'clock Pacific, Monday through Friday, and 3 o'clock, from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Saturdays. It's a lot of hours. And I'm on the phone all the time with my clients. So it's always best to just email us, because the people that call in always go to voicemail because we're already on the phone. And frankly, we would prefer to talk to you on the phone. Sometimes it's just not possible, and we have to use email because there's just so many people. I'm very pleased that in the month of September, we had probably about 350 new applicants sign up with us. So we're working with an awful lot of people. We currently have approximately 1,300 subscribers who are working with us now, which is about 25% of the applicant pool or better. So I'm very, very happy that we're working with so many people. I want to remind you before I go, check out the master class, which you can learn about at prepjet.net, taught by Joyce and Jill. I like to call them Team J and J. Also, I'll be doing a workshop next Wednesday at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, on rebuilding self-confidence, which is really just for retakes. For those of you that are current subscribers to the program and want to know, though, how to get started and what you should do, watch my videos, like the one on the Big Six. What is the Big Six? How do I make a brain chart? How do I read a multiple choice question? I'm a retake. I'm failed. I want to get started again. What should I do? There are 80 plus videos. They're only 6 to 8 minutes long that I would welcome you to watch. And they're available to all the basic, plus, and premium people. And for those of you that are not Prepjet clients, in YouTube, I think there's a video called Demystifying and Addressing the Myths about the EPPP, where I lay out how the exam is structured and what to focus on and what not to focus on. We wish you all very well. We hope that no matter what program you use, focus on first the Big Six. Remember, clinical, psychopathology, ethics, heavily, heavily weighted, followed by physio and lifespan and org psych. Combined, that's more than passing. And you don't need 100%. You don't need 90. You don't need 80. You're allowed to miss a gang load of questions and get a license to practice psychology. You only need to get a C in most states. You can do it. You just have to believe in yourself. Trust the material, trust yourself. And I want to thank all of you for watching this, when and if you do, and a pleasant weekend to you all. And we'll be back next Friday. And of course, if you have any topics for our podcasts or for any of my workshops, feel free to just write Ethan, ETHAN, at prepjet.net. My name is Scott Abels, and I want to thank you for your time again. Bye-bye.